All right, welcome back. You're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. Let's take a look at what's making the political headlines this Sunday morning. Just take a look at the Standard on Sunday. My guest, like I said before, Dismas Mokua, political analyst, Anderson Kadendu, an aspirant, political aspirant in the county of Meru in the coming general election. I have Dr. Walter Ongeti, governance and strategy expert, and NASA. Is there a code? You're a NASA strategist now, right? Jared Okello. Thank you for joining us and welcome back. You've been missing in action for quite some time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's always good to be back.
All right. Let's very quickly, in the next quarter of an hour or so, just take a look at some of the political stories in the Standard on Sunday. Let's start with a splash. Of course, that is Nzao Musao just telling a story about Rosemary Odinga's being taken ill a few days ago. Why I fear for my daughter, the anxiety that the Odingas are after daughter Rosemary suffered a mild stroke. And of course, she is seeking an elective seat here in Nairobi. And I don't know, maybe, what's your take on what's happening? What effect is this likely to have maybe on her political career? I mean, obviously she gets well, but is there a possibility she may pull out of politics? How much impact or what effect is this having on the former Prime Minister?
Ben, thank you firstly for having us on the show. It's always a pleasure to be here and to talk about issues that touch on the Kenyan populace. Our prayers are with Rosemary, and we hope that she gets well as soon as possible to be back here at home. I've read from what has been captured that even by the time she was going to South Africa, she had already stabilized. But just in the interest of abundance of caution, yes, they chose to take her to South Africa so that she can have, that privacy and good ambience for quick healing,
right?
Because she's still recuperating. So we pray that all goes well and she comes back home. We hope again that will not have adverse effects on her political standing. Whether she chooses to run or she offers tacit support from the background. Of course, we understand that she plays a pivotal role, particularly to her father's political exercises in this country. So our prayers are that she gets well and be in a position to carry out with her duties. And if she's still in a stable condition to run as an aspirant in Kibra, we hope that she would still be able to do that. The Constitution gives her the mandate to do so. Nothing really stops her. Only if her health will be so adversely affected that she cannot be able to carry out her duties as a member of parliament for Kibra.
All right.
But I don't think we are getting there. We believe in divine healing above all, that she will be back home and carry out with her activities.
Doctor, if the doctors advise her to slow down, would the family maybe consider advising her to step away from politics?
I think, thank you first of all, Ben, for having me on the show again. And I also join Gerard in wishing her well. You can only imagine the kind of stress that the family may be going through at this moment, remembering that this family also lost a son, Fidel, just about 2 years ago. Right. And so it must be a very difficult time, you can imagine, for Prime Minister Raila Odinga. And of course, sometimes you want to relate the tribulations that Raila goes through to those of Abraham Lincoln. You remember Abraham went through some difficult, trying times, lost a fiancé, lost several elections. The question one wants to ask is, would this be the 1860 of Raila Odinga when Abraham Lincoln won the elections in the US? So, but perhaps then to your question, the family will have to make a family decision, I want to imagine. But of course, Rosemary had taken a very pivotal position in the politics of Raila Odinga. You started observing that in every trip that he was making, he almost certainly was accompanied by Rosemary. And so maybe playing an advisory role and maybe playing a strategic role, and also that female figure in the politics of NASA, you are aware that the luminaries are all male,
Right.
and her position is very pivotal. So as to whether she will vie is a decision that maybe will be left to the family and the doctor's advisory.
All right. Anderson, you have been on the campaign trail, probably at some of, you have seen Raila on in action. Do you think this is going to have any impact on his political campaigns? And also, you know, being a politician in this campaign trail, how much, you know, how it can take a toll on you, right?
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me in the show. Let me first of all wish Rosemary a quick recovery. And I know as a politician, having one of your family members falling ill is not easy, because you know politics comes with a lot of stress. I understand the tribulation that Raila Odinga might be going through, but I know for sure all will be well. As Gerald has said, we're looking for divine intervention for quick recovery for Rosemary, and that's what I can basically say. Right. Because I know, we know Raila Odinga lost Fendero 2 years ago, as he is saying, and we understand what might happen, or what might cause at this period of time when it's very critical, when you're going to the next general election, and which is very critical to Raila Odinga.
All right.
Yeah.
Dismas, what do you think about this?
Well, you know, political campaigns are very exhausting. And you recall when Jakaya Kikwete was campaigning for president in Tanzania, at some stage he collapsed because of having spent a lot of time in the campaign trail. And the same happened not long ago with Hillary Clinton. She suffered from fatigue. So there's no doubt that there's a lot of pressure during the campaigns. Yeah. But if she recovers and the medical doctors are of the opinion that she's in good shape to run, she can easily run and win. Because Rosemary will not be running on her own political capital, in as much as Jared would want us to believe. She'll be running on the father's political goodwill, the father's political capital. So she doesn't even need to be around during the campaigns. She can come a week to the nomination, present her papers, and take a bed rest. And if the father is very keen to have a takeover as the president, that will happen. You recall the same happened in Makueni, the case of Mtula Kilonzo, who again won on similar circumstances. Because you recall after the protracted legal proceedings in the court, there was not sufficient time to campaign. And Mtula Kilonzo ran on the goodwill of the then court principals and won. And if we would be talking about, say, Rosemary Adhiambo, who is not Rosemary Odinga, then it would be a complicated ballgame.
All right. And
again, the second issue, Ben, is the state of Medicare in Kenya. Again, if Rosemary would be a child of a normal family, probably should be long buried, should have died, considering that we have a healthcare situation in Kenya. And I think maybe in as much as when somebody is sick, you're not supposed to anticipate and address these pertinent issues, it's important for us to ask ourselves whether our leaders actually care for the interests of Wanjiku, or they're merely interested in the votes.
All right. There's a story here on page 3 of the Standard. It's from your county, Anderson, saying it's a catfight for Meru woman representative. There has been this alliance of Kikali, that is, I think, Kiraitu Kajuju, that is Florence Kajuju, the incumbent woman representative, and Mithika Linturi. But there seems to be another name, that is Kawira Mwangaza, apparently being fronted by the deputy president. What is happening there? Maybe you can fill us in.
Thank you. Then, we condemned this Kikari a long time ago, because this Kikari came with a view that is Jubilee, which most of us were demystifying. And we can see now it's coming out very clearly that now Kikali, you know, Kikali in Kiswahili is something very bitter. Very sharp. so it's something we condemned a long time ago, and we warned the president about this outfit, because it was formed based on a boardroom agreement.
Okay.
And not the people of Meru. And now that Kawira Mwangaza is coming, because she is very popular on the ground, and the deputy president, we are having reports that she's approaching her to shift from PNU to Jubilee. Those are rumors, which we have not authenticated as of now.
All right.
But she's very popular on the ground, and we are hearing that Kajuju is backing off for Kawira Mwangaza.
Interesting, interesting. We shall be getting into Meru politics later on. Let's go to page 8. No, not page 8. That is page 10 of the Standard on Sunday. Uhuru, give us another term to complete our projects. It was a meet the two people of parts of Nairobi and the county of Kiambu. What's your take on this meet the two people and urging Kenyans to give them another term? Another term.
Well, you know, there has been registered dissenting voices coming from nowhere else but Uhuru and Ruto's backyards. And people are jittery because they haven't seen anything worth talking about that has been implemented, particularly on the things that they did promise Kenyans. Right. And you know why people vote is because politics, firstly, together with the presidential candidate who comes from your region, it is equated to a leverage towards economic progress. And that is why many a times politicians, particularly president and his deputy, tend to have many people in their cabinet originating from their backyards. That is why people vote along tribal lines, because they know that is the only avenue upon which you will be stable economically. The areas that voted overwhelmingly for Jubilee in the last elections haven't seen anything tangible that has been, you know, be it a flagship project or be it something that has been, you know, they promised and not delivered. So there are a lot of dissenting voices from these regions. And if Uhuru Kenyatta can go back to his own home turf, making stopovers from one market center to another, as he did yesterday, from Kikuyu to Lari to Limuru to Githunguri. This is where he was born. This is where we would presume that he has the best support ever. Similarly,
that doesn't mean he can't go back
well,
to reassure that his Boma is safe.
Yeah, you don't expect Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga to go to Awasi, Otho, Ahero, Kisumu, all that.
Dismas has said on this show a lot of times that Raila Odinga loses goats from his Boma a lot in terms of politically speaking. What do you say, Dismas?
Well, you know, the problem with Raila Odinga is when he's given the opportunity, and I'll use the same example you are saying. He's got goats in his paddock, but he's unable to take good care of them. So you get thieves coming in the middle of the night and disappearing with them. So these are goats that he actually owns. Now, the difference with President Kenyatta is voter apathy. Because when you go to Kiambu today and you speak to the voters, they say he made so many promises that he's not been able to fulfill. And when you see the head of state going to Kiambu, where he's supposed to have a fanatical support and pleading with people to give him the opportunity to complete his development projects, then you begin to understand that there's actually something wrong. And Chinua Achebe said a long time ago that when you see a toad jumping during broad daylight, you must smell a rat. There's something wrong. And there's something wrong in President Kenyatta's backyard.
Right.
And this has been occasioned by, maybe it's important to give the reason, it's been occasioned by the fact that when initially he was running for president, he cut a deal with the people of Kiambu, and he told them, as your president, I'm going to prioritize this region. But now, 4 years later, there's nothing to show for it. It's as if he gave them a bad check. However, his family and friends are beneficiaries of his administration. So if you go to a bar, a normal bar in Kiambu, people will be telling you that for us, we have not seen the benefits of his presidency. However, his family and friends are prime beneficiaries. Right. And I think that's what the president is trying to address.
Jared, let me allow you to finish your point. Sorry, I cut you.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is it is foolhardy for Uhuru Kenyatta to go back home and plead literally with the people to give him a second term. Now, he talked about certain projects he initiated that he thinks, given another opportunity, would be able to complete them. But really, what is there to talk about? Is he talking about rampant corruption within his system so that he perpetuates it to the very end? Is he talking about the ineptitude that has been exhibited in his administration so Kenyans can allow him additional time to carry out with it? Right. So that kind of, you know, dissent that is coming from deep down his backyard is a testament that this is an administration heading home.
Dr. The president challenged the opposition to table their manifesto as Jubilee have. What do they mean? What does this mean?
Before I come to that, Ben, I think there is nothing wrong with the president going to his backyard. And of course, we've said here before that the environment in which politics are being transacted today in this country and globally is totally different from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. In fact, in governance today, there is a lot of what we call shareholder activism. And for the public, then public activism is growing every other day. You cannot take for granted, and that is what Jubilee may have been doing previously, you cannot take for granted the support that you get. And I think the president is now realizing that for him to start off and move around the country, he has to go back to his backyard and just consolidate that particular support and ensure that he has that support before he moves forward. Perhaps it is just in the terms of the messaging that I don't know if it was resonating well with the people, and then again at the same time I had concerns about the president sometimes switching, of course driving the point home, but switching to his mother tongue and being able to drive the point home. But the point is this, that advisors of the president, especially communication advisors, must always try to remind him that he remains the head of state as long as he's in a public gathering. And a county like Kiambu and some of the places he was going to, like Ruaka, Limuru and so forth, are cosmopolitan counties. The moment you switch to mother tongue, you are telling the Luya, the Luo and the Mijikenda who is in that rally that now, wait a moment, let me address the owners of this place and then the rest of you can come in later. So it is something that the president needs to come out. The other thing that, and now you're talking about the manifesto of the opposition, is that the messaging still was off. Remember that the opposition in the last two rallies, the one in Eldoret and the one in Meru, they were able to bring out very clearly the poking holes in the administration of Jubilee. And you remember even somebody like Musalia Mudavadi coming out and saying, if we come to power, we are going to deal with some of these loans that have been borrowed over time and so forth. So the opposition has been able, and that is the role of the opposition, to poke holes where they feel like the national government has, or the Jubilee government has not been able to achieve. And so in terms of tabling the agenda and the manifesto, perhaps that is going to come as we move ahead. What Jubilee should be able to pitch, and I think that attempt was there yesterday, is to attempt to demonstrate that what the opposition is saying is not right, and that is not coming out clearly.
All right. Great stuff. Anderson, what do you think about this?
Considering there's nothing wrong with the president going to the village, because politics have changed now. The dynamics of politics have changed over time. And what Wanjiku now wants is a one-on-one touch with the leaders. And that's what we're advocating. But the problem that the president has in our region, the Mount Kenya region and Mount Kenya East, is that people feel that, yes, we voted you to the man, but we have not seen you, we have not touched you, we have not felt you on the ground. That's the biggest problem. And that's what the people of Meru and the Mount Kenya East region are voting about. You remember the county of Meru and the county of Rakani, they were one county. And there are so many areas which have been marginalized over time. The government appointments, which we always have been seeing, the ministers like Reto Moronge, Agina Mutai Ringo, they only used to come, Agina Mudaura, they only used to come from Imenti, which is only 3 constituencies. And that's what the rest of the entire region is voting against. So the president must come out very clearly and address those issues on the ground. Those issues, more issues that people feel that they're not handling.
Ardent support base, particularly those that we can trace facing Jubilee in 2013, are under immense threat at the moment. You take Rift Valley, for instance, and you go to Baringo to begin with. You know, when the deputy president was attending a rally there, a peace rally though, 60 meters away there were gunshots that, you know, culminated into the death of area chief. And he could see the kind of, you know, frustrations on people's faces just because Jubilee administration hasn't played its role as an administration. You look at what is happening in Bomet, Narok. You come to Kajiado and many other regions that were perceived to be Jubilee strongholds in the other election. So these are now gravitating towards NASA, which is a good story for me. But again, that has now forced Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto to go back home and start the journey afresh. Now, what we are asking is whether they will have ample time to move from their backyards and then reconsolidate regions that were perceived to be under their grasp, and hence face us in the election. So that kind of dissenting voices, not just from their backyards, but across regions that supported them in the last elections, are actually informing the kind of movement that they are having right now. But again, most importantly, Kibaki, with all his imperfections, I never at any given time heard Kibaki address his backyard in Kikuyu.
All right.
I even doubt whether he can speak Kikuyu. Because, as my friend has said, when you are at the national platform as the president of a country, you have to operate under the two languages that are official to this nation. But the moment you retreat to your mother tongue in your region cocoons, then we really wonder whether you really mean well to this nation, whether you still want to capitalize on the citizenry of Kenya, or you have just chosen to be a village boy.
Does that demean the presidency when he does that?
It does not demean per se, but it creates some component of exclusion. Remember, in communication, you are the experts and Dismas here, there's usually the messaging, and then the channel of communication, and the recipient, and the translation as well. He could be discussing and sharing information and driving a critical point home. And I also do that sometimes. There is something that I can only describe very well in my own mother tongue, and perhaps that is to drive the point home. But however, how many people at that particular moment are listening to that message? How do the others translate? And so at no point, just like the president cannot drop his security because he is in a political rally, he remains head of state. The same applies to his body language, the said in the unsaid. For instance, if you start switching to the mother tongue, there is the unsaid that you are passing across. And that is something that his handlers must be able to bring him up to speed very, very fast. But another point that I must be able to agree with Gerard is that Jubilee may be making so many assumptions. They may be making so many assumptions that the numbers are favoring them. If you look at the numbers that have been adjusted, including the ones that were done in terms of the registration, Jubilee can only get 50 plus 1% if they are able to maintain their strongholds with 100% voter turnout, and together with those that are called battleground counties. So they do not have a lot of time to play around in their backyard, but they still have to move around in those counties that are battlegrounds like Narok, like Wajir, like Isiolo, like Marsabit, and be able to convince those people in those counties that they need to be supported. Now, if somebody sits in Narok and watches a clip of you speaking in your mother tongue, then they start wondering, are we together?
All right.
Tuko pamoja.
So you say that the people that voted for Jubilee supporters have to vote to the man. Anderson, are you people of Mount Kenya going to vote to the man? It's 5 months of the election, but what is the feeling on the ground?
Nothing is lost, Kitili, but as we speak now, like in Meru, it's 50-50. But nothing is lost. And
is it really 50-50?
Yeah, it's 50-50. And I can authenticate what I'm saying. Meru has got 3 regions. That is the Menti region, which has got 4 constituencies, which Uhuru Kenyatta has got 90% support. It has got Tigania, which has got 2 constituencies, Tigania East and West, which has got 152,000 votes.
All right.
And Egembe, where Mira comes from, it has got 248,000. So Tigania and Egembe, those regions feel that the president has always favored the Menti people. And the number of votes can relate to 400,000, which is equal to the number of votes in the Menti region. So that means it's 50-50, where people feel that they have been marginalized over time, they have not been given priority on government appointments, they have not been considered on development. Okay. The Amira has been is not going to is not being marketed anymore. That the government has neglected the produce because the produce Mira feels that now we need to look for another alternative government which can look at our problems.
All right.
And that's where the problem is coming in.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Dismas, what's your take on all this?
When you recall what I normally say about Mr. Raila Odinga, that if today it tells you that your daughter is pregnant, you must be ready to be a grandfather. 2013 elections, Mr. Raila Odinga went to Meru, and while holding a bunch of Mira, he told them the Mira trade is going to face a lot of challenges. It's going to be complicated. In fact, Mira worldwide is going to be banned. And his prediction came to fruition, and I'm sure Jared is a very happy man. But the fact that we're even discussing that the Meru vote is up in the air for contestation between NASA and Jubilee, that alone should make Jubilee very worried. Because for the longest time, they've assumed that Meru is right in the basket. And a few days ago, I saw Linturi on national TV, and he spoke in 2 channels. Right. He said right now, as we speak, Meru is 50-50. And for a moment, I thought that he's become irrational. He went to another TV station and he repeated the same thing. And he said that the Jubilee administration has taken the Meru people for granted for a long time, that they're being treated as an appendix. And he said that it's time for the president to go to Meru and celebrate peace. And he said the Meru people are giving them only 5 months for them to do a U-turn. And the failure to do so, in his words, he said the Jubilee is going to face a major challenge. Now that's Linturi speaking. And then a few days later, Kiraitu Murungi also says the same thing. He said merging these political parties into one outfit was a big mistake. And he went ahead to dismiss the crowd that Raila Odinga had. And he said that's a bunch of unemployed people, unemployed youth, which again is taking himself to a slaughterhouse, because he's actually admitting that during the Jubilee administration, and him as the senator for Meru, they've not been able to create opportunities for the Meru youth. Unless somebody says, all those guys were transported from Nyando and they were taken to Meru. But those are Merus there who on a weekday, they come in truckloads to come and start saying that Uru must go, Uru must go. But that's a very strong statement that we have, the levels of unemployment in Kenya are so high. And to address the issue of the president speaking in his mother tongue, nothing wrong, provided he does it in the privacy of his home or his bedroom. Because the president in Kenya is a symbol of national unity. And when you're the symbol of national unity, you're not supposed to speak in a language which alienates so many people. Right. As Walter has indicated, for a fellow in Kisii or Mandera who would like to understand what the president is saying, and he has to look for a translated clip, that's really unacceptable. But again, Jared would accept this, that anytime Raila Odinga gets into trouble, when there's a political situation in Kenya and he's feeling a bit jilted, he'll quickly run to Kibera, where he has got his fanatical base and try to celebrate a new beginning. And I guess that's the same thing that President Kenyatta was doing, by going to Kiambu, to his birthplace and celebrate a new beginning and try to tell his folks that I'm still around, don't forget everything about me.
Would you allow me to crunch some figures?
All right, okay, I want us to take a break, but yeah, let's...
Just quickly, my brother Daktari Walter has said that what Kenyatta needs to do is to consolidate his support base and train his eyes on battleground states so that he can be able to be in a better position. But one thing that has come out quite clearly, the new IBC chair has said there are 2 million votes that are under scrutiny. And you remember when Raila Odinga presented a petition before the Supreme Court, 2 million votes were actually, I would say, were at stake in the sense that they only voted for the president, but the same figure wasn't reflected downstream to other elective positions. Yes. So what we are saying is, if this register is going to be cleaned, because it has to be cleaned, then the 2 million votes won't be there. And the 2 million votes were actually to the advantage of Jubilee government.
How would you prove that, Jared?
Well, we had our evidence in court, which was thrown away by the Supreme Court for being what it is. So,
that's
what I know, Ben, is that this cleaning will not only affect Jubilee, but also the NASA strongholds. So it is not going to be a Jubilee affair alone or Jubilee strongholds alone. But again, I do not know. I'm not a specialist in that area of auditing, but I do not know how the audit will be done in such a thorough manner as to remove an entire 2 million votes from the register and with proper verification. And that is going to be another area for contestation. You can be sure of that.
That's a topic in itself for another show. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition on KTN News. When we return, we shall be having our realpolitik discussion. We are talking about the real issues of the election in 2017. Remember, we are still waiting for that report by Jesuit Haki Money Center on what Kenyans, what Wanjiko, as Dismas likes to call her, thinks are the issues of the 2017 general election versus what the politicians are telling Kenyans on the campaign trail. Stay with us here on Sunday edition.